The world stands at a crossroads tonight. While families across developing nations dream of opportunity, while children envision futures built on hope and hard work, a declaration from the highest office in America threatens to slam shut the golden door that has defined this nation for centuries. This is America Visa Update, and what I'm about to reveal will shake the very foundation of everything you thought you knew about American immigration policy. Picture this. A single mother in Mumbai, her hands worn from years of labor, clutching a faded photograph of the Statue of Liberty. A brilliant student in Lagos, his university acceptance letter trembling in his hands as he refreshes his visa application status for the 100th time. An entrepreneur in Manila, his business plan that could create hundreds of American jobs sitting unopened on an embassy desk. A doctor in Karachi who spent a decade training to serve underserved communities. A software engineer in Nairobi whose innovations could revolutionize American technology. Tonight, their dreams hang in the balance as former President Donald Trump, now returning to power, has announced his intention to fundamentally reshape who gets to call America home. This isn't just another policy debate happening in the distant corridors of Washington. This is about real people, real dreams, and real consequences that will ripple across continents and generations. The implications of what's unfolding right now will determine whether the promise inscribed on Lady Liberty's pedestal, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free," remains a sacred covenant or becomes nothing more than hollow words etched in copper. Let me take you back to where this story truly begins. America, the self-proclaimed nation of immigrants, has always existed in a state of tension between its founding ideals and the political realities of each generation. From the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 to the Immigration Act of 1924 that specifically targeted Southern and Eastern Europeans, from Operation Wetback in the 1950s to the modern debates over border walls and travel bans, the question of who deserves to be American has never been simple, never been clean, and never been resolved without fierce battles that test the soul of this republic. The history of American immigration reads like a pendulum swinging between openness and restriction, between welcoming arms and closed fists. Each era has produced its own justifications for keeping certain groups out. In the late 1800s, Chinese laborers who built the Transcontinental Railroad were deemed racially inferior and unassimilable. In the 1920s, quotas dramatically favored Northern Europeans while excluding Southern Europeans, Asians, and Africans. After World War II, America opened its doors to European refugees while maintaining tight restrictions on others. The 1965 Immigration Act finally abolished discriminatory quotas, leading to a dramatic diversification of American immigration. Now, 6 decades later, we may be witnessing a reversal of that landmark legislation's principles. Now, as Trump prepares to implement what his administration describes as the most comprehensive immigration overhaul in American history, we must understand not just what is being proposed, but why it matters to every single person watching this video, regardless of where you currently stand on this earth. Because immigration policy isn't just about laws and borders, it's about the kind of world we choose to create, the values we choose to honor, and the future we choose to build. The declaration that has sent shockwaves through immigrant communities worldwide didn't come as a surprise to those who've been paying attention. Throughout his campaign, Trump made immigration restriction a centerpiece of his political message, but the specificity and scope of what's now being discussed goes far beyond campaign rhetoric. We're talking about potential changes to family-based migration, dramatic reductions in refugee admissions, stricter economic requirements for visa applicants, and what some are calling a philosophical transformation from welcoming the world's vulnerable to cherry-picking only the wealthiest and most skilled. Let's break down what this actually means on the ground. First, there's the proposed overhaul of the family reunification system, which has been the backbone of American immigration for decades. Currently, U.S. citizens can sponsor certain family members for green cards, The new proposals would dramatically narrow who qualifies, potentially limiting it to only spouses and minor children. Adult children, parents, and siblings could find themselves cut off from legal pathways to join their American relatives. Imagine being a U.S. citizen unable to help your aging mother get medical care in America, or watching your brother's family denied entry while you celebrate Thanksgiving alone. Then there's the economic component. Reports suggest that new visa applicants from developing nations would face significantly higher financial barriers to entry. We're not talking about small increases. We're talking about requirements that would effectively price out the vast majority of applicants from countries in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. A Pakistani engineer, a Kenyan nurse, a Guatemalan teacher, all could find themselves excluded not because they lack skills or character, but simply because their bank accounts don't meet arbitrary thresholds set by bureaucrats thousands of miles away. The refugee and asylum system faces perhaps the most dramatic transformation. The United States has historically served as a beacon of hope for those fleeing persecution, violence, and oppression. From the Vietnamese boat people to Syrian families escaping civil war, America has provided sanctuary when the world grew dark. Now, proposals on the table would slash refugee admissions to historic lows, implement extreme vetting procedures that could take years, and create additional barriers specifically targeting applicants from developing regions deemed security risks. The widow fleeing domestic violence in El Salvador, the political dissident escaping imprisonment in Ethiopia, the religious minority running from persecution in Pakistan, all could find America's door locked when they need it most. But let's not pretend this is happening in a vacuum. There are legitimate concerns driving these proposals, concerns we cannot simply dismiss or ignore. Some Americans worry about economic competition, about whether new immigrants might take jobs or depress wages. Others express concerns about cultural integration, about whether people from vastly different backgrounds can successfully adopt American values and customs. Still others focus on security, wondering whether in our desire to be compassionate, we might inadvertently create vulnerabilities. These concerns deserve serious engagement, not dismissal. And here's where the debate becomes complex, nuanced, and critically important. Because the data tells a far different story than the rhetoric suggests. Study after study shows that immigration, including immigration from developing nations, has been an economic positive for America. Immigrants start businesses at higher rates than native-born citizens. They revitalize dying towns and aging cities. They fill critical gaps in the labor market, from agricultural work to high-tech innovation. They pay billions in taxes, often into systems like Social Security that they may never fully benefit from themselves. Consider Silicon Valley, the beating heart of America's technological dominance. Look at the founders of major companies. Google with Sergey Brin from Russia. WhatsApp with John Combe from Ukraine. Zoom with Eric Yuan from China. These aren't outliers. They're representative of a pattern where immigrant entrepreneurs have created millions of American jobs and trillions in economic value. Now imagine a world where the next generation of innovators never gets the chance to enter because their country of origin is deemed undesirable. Or consider America's hospitals, especially in rural areas struggling to attract doctors. Physicians from India, Pakistan, and other developing nations have become the backbone of healthcare in communities from Appalachia to the Great Plains. During the COVID pandemic, when America needed healthcare workers most desperately, immigrant doctors and nurses were overrepresented on the front lines, treating patients and saving lives while putting their own health at risk. What happens to these communities if the pipeline of medical professionals from developing nations dries up? The cultural argument deserves scrutiny too. Critics worry about assimilation, about whether newcomers truly embrace American values. But American history tells a different story. Every wave of immigration has faced similar accusations. The Irish were told they could never be real Americans because of their Catholic faith. The Italians were dismissed as unable to integrate. The Jews were accused of divided loyalties. Yet, each group ultimately enriched American culture while adopting its core principles. The same pattern holds today. Research shows that immigrants and their children embrace American identity enthusiastically, often more patriotically than native-born citizens who take their birthright for granted. As for security concerns, these too require nuanced examination. Yes, vetting matters. Yes, we must be thoughtful about who enters, but the track record suggests that refugees and immigrants from developing nations pose minimal security threats. Terrorists are far more likely to be homegrown radicals or visitors on tourist visas than thoroughly vetted refugees who've spent years in camps waiting for resettlement. The 9/11 hijackers weren't refugees. They were on tourist and student visas from countries that wouldn't be affected by these new restrictions. What's really at stake here goes beyond policy specifics. It's about America's identity and role in the world. For over 2 centuries, America has stood as proof that a nation can be built not on ethnic or religious homogeneity, but on shared ideals and mutual commitment to democratic principles. People from every corner of the earth have come here and become American, contributing their talents while adopting this nation's values. This hasn't always been easy or pretty, but it has been the source of America's dynamism, creativity, and global influence. If America now declares that people from developing nations are less desirable, less worthy, less American, what message does that send to the world? What does it say about our values? And practically speaking, what does it do to America's soft power and global leadership? When the United States needs allies in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, will those nations trust a country that has told their citizens they're not good enough to be American? There's also the moral dimension that cannot be ignored. Behind every visa application is a human being with hopes, dreams, fears, and dignity. The school teacher in Ghana who wants to give her children better opportunities. The engineer in India who wants to work on cutting-edge technology. The refugee from Afghanistan who helped American troops and now faces Taliban retribution. These aren't statistics or policy abstractions. They're people whose lives and futures hang in the balance. Now, I want to be clear about something crucial. Disagreeing with these proposed restrictions doesn't mean supporting open borders or unlimited immigration. Virtually everyone agrees that nations have the right and responsibility to control their borders and determine immigration policy. The question isn't whether America should have immigration rules, but what those rules should be and whether they align with American values and interests. There are legitimate debates to be had about numbers, about procedures, about balancing competing concerns. But when we start making blanket determinations about people based solely on whether their country of origin is deemed developed or developing, we're abandoning merit-based evaluation for something much more troubling. We're essentially saying that where you were born matters more than who you are, what you can contribute, or what you've overcome. Consider the practical implications for specific communities. Indian and Chinese immigrants have been facing green card backlogs stretching decades due to per-country caps. Many have lived in America for years on temporary work visas, buying homes, raising children, paying taxes, and contributing to their communities, all while uncertain about their long-term status. New restrictions could make their situations even more precarious. Filipino nurses who've been the backbone of American elder care could find family reunification impossible. Mexican agricultural workers whose labor feeds America could be shut out of any path to legal status. The economic consequences extend beyond individual stories. American businesses, from tech giants to small manufacturers, depend on being able to recruit global talent. Universities rely on international students who bring tuition dollars and research capabilities. Agricultural operations need seasonal workers. If America makes it significantly harder for people from developing nations to come legally, businesses will either move operations overseas or face critical labor shortages. Neither outcome benefits American workers or the American economy. There's also the geopolitical chess game to consider. While America debates closing its doors, other nations are actively recruiting the global talent pool. Canada has made attracting skilled immigrants a national priority. Australia operates a points-based system designed to bring in workers the economy needs. The United Kingdom, despite Brexit, is working to position itself as welcoming to talented immigrants. If America exits the competition for global talent, other nations will eagerly fill the void, strengthening their economies while weakening ours. But perhaps the most profound consequence is what this does to America's self-conception and global reputation. America has always been aspirational, imperfect, but striving toward its highest ideals. The immigration story has been central to that narrative. When we tell the world that people from poorer nations aren't good enough, when we abandon the principle that anyone, regardless of birth circumstances, can make it in America through hard work and talent, we fundamentally alter who we are as a nation. So where does this leave us? As Trump's administration begins implementing these changes, millions of people around the world are watching, waiting, hoping. Immigration lawyers are preparing for regulatory changes. Advocacy groups are organizing resistance. Courts will inevitably become battlegrounds as various provisions face legal challenges. Congress might weigh in, though partisan gridlock makes legislative solutions uncertain. For those of you watching from developing nations, hoping to study, work, or build a life in America, these are undoubtedly frightening times. The path forward is unclear, the rules are changing, and your dreams feel increasingly out of reach. But history teaches us that America's immigration debates are never settled permanently. Restrictive periods give way to more welcoming eras. Public opinion shifts as people see the human faces behind the policy debates. What seems politically impossible today can become reality tomorrow. For those watching from within America, regardless of your immigration status or political views, you have power and responsibility. You can contact your representatives, support organizations helping immigrant communities, share stories that humanize the debate, and vote for candidates whose immigration policies align with your values. Democracy means we all have a voice in determining what kind of nation we want to be. The coming months and years will determine whether America remains a beacon of hope for the world's ambitious, talented, and desperate, or whether the golden door closes, leaving millions in darkness. Whether we choose inclusion or exclusion, generosity or suspicion, our highest ideals or our deepest fears. These aren't just political questions. They're moral ones that will define this generation and shape the nation we leave to the next. This is America Visa Update, and we'll continue bringing you the latest developments on this evolving story. Subscribe to stay informed as immigration policy transforms before our eyes. Hit that notification bell because what happens next will affect millions of lives and determine America's future for generations to come. Share this video with anyone who needs to understand what's at stake. Leave a comment telling us how these changes might affect you or your family. Your voice matters in this conversation. The story isn't over. The battle for America's soul continues, and which side prevails depends on whether we remember that before we were citizens of any nation, we were all human beings, deserving of dignity, opportunity, and hope. The question before us is simple yet profound. What kind of America do we want to be? The answer we give will echo through history, shaping not just immigration policy, but the fundamental character of this nation and its place in the world. Stay informed, stay engaged, and never forget that ordinary people standing together have changed the course of history before and can do so again. This is America Visa Update, signing off, but the conversation continues, and your voice is needed now more than ever.